Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. My name is Mike Millian. I'm the president of the Private Motor Truck Council of Canada. Today we've got an exciting webinar for you on some exciting technology being used by Loblaws from Gatik. Just before we get into the presentation, I want to go through a few ground rules. Just so you're aware of what's going to happen today. So the webinar is going to be an hour in length. It is being recorded. Everybody who registered to attend will receive a recording of this presentation. Your ability to unmute yourself and turn your cameras on has been disabled. There will be time for questions and answers at the end, roughly 10 minutes. You can put your questions in the chat feature of the Zoom app, and then we will answer your questions at the end of today's presentation. I want to thank our sponsors who make these webinars possible. Intact Insurance and Samsara sponsored today's webinar to make this available to you for free. And of course, I want to thank our speakers, who I will get to introducing to you in a minute, for taking time out of their busy schedules to present this interesting topic here for you today. So just before we get into the presentations, I do have a message from one of our sponsors that I want to play for you. I'm going to shut off my video and share this message with you. And when the video is over, we will be back. So thank you, and see you again in a minute. Great. Thanks again to Samsara. Hopefully the video came through okay. Again, I want to thank Samsara for sponsoring today's webinar and for their video that they shared with us. I also want to thank our second sponsor, Intact Insurance. Intact does not have a sponsored message for me to share with you. However, I still want to acknowledge their sponsorship of this webinar, and we will send this PowerPoint out to you, which will have the video in it from Samsara, and it's also going to have your website address for Intact Insurance, so you can reach out to Intact if you have any questions. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, Samsara and Intact, for making today's webinar possible. And without any further ado, I want to get into today's presentation, because that's what you're all here for, to hear the topic and not listen to me ramble on. So we have Rich Steiner, VP of Government Relations and Public Affairs with Gatik, and Wayne Scott, Senior Director of Transportation Maintenance with Loblaws Canada Limited, here with us today. Rich and Wayne, welcome. Wayne, if you want to flip your camera on and unmute. Perfect. Rich, you've done the same. I've stopped sharing, Rich. If you want to share your screen.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the introductions very much, and amazing to see so many folks online this morning. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your days to join. I'm just going to go through the technology steps here, get the presentation on screen, and we should be good to go.
I'll let you know when it comes up, and once I can see it, we're all good. I'm going to disappear into the background and watch you guys present along with the rest of the audience. So perfect. I can see it there, Rich. Everything looks good. So I'm going to go off camera, mute myself, and enjoy the presentation. So, thank you. See you in a while.
Excellent. Thanks again, Mike. And I'll kick this off by saying I always make this joke. I'm glad that the presentations come on your screen easily. We have no problem getting an autonomous truck to move from point to point without a human operator on board. But sometimes I seem to struggle with PowerPoints and conference calls and Zoom and all the rest of it. So I'm glad the technology on this end is working. So once again, thanks to everyone for taking the time to log in this morning. We're excited to share about our partnership between Loblaw and Gatik, what we've been working on over the past several years in Ontario. So hopefully some folks are somewhat familiar, at least with Gatik. I know everybody's familiar with Loblaw, so I thought I'd maybe just start with the first slide. I'll introduce the company a little bit more. We'll talk today about the strategic partnership between Loblaw and Gatik, what we've achieved together to date, how we are strategically aligned, and ultimately, from both our perspectives, I think how our autonomous transportation service can really benefit Loblaw's and consumer Loblaw's customers. That's what we're here to achieve. So a little bit about Gatik, just for anybody who's not heard of us before or somewhat newer to us. So we're an autonomous transportation as a service leader. What does that mean? We focus exclusively on B2B short-haul logistics, so moving goods between distribution centers, micro-fulfillment centers, warehouses or dark stores where consumers don't have access to goods, to retail locations or other convenient local pickup points. And when we say we provide autonomous transportation as a service, we see ourselves as providing that end-to-end solution, seamlessly integrating into Loblaw's fleet to provide an autonomous service across that B2B short-haul network. I'll talk a little bit about our approach to safety and operations in greater detail further into the presentation. But at a critical high level, our focus is on known, repeatable, predictable routes, which simply put helps us to mitigate the number of edge cases or unusual situations that our vehicles might encounter, maximize for safety, and achieve that aha moment as far as autonomous transportation is concerned, relatively quicker and certainly safely, perhaps relative to other use cases of the technology. We do conduct revenue generating operations on our routes, as noted there, and we're incredibly proud to partner with Canada's largest retailer, as we have done since end of 2019, beginning of 2020, I think, which is a great segue into the next slide. And perhaps I'll pass over to Wayne here, maybe just to speak a little bit to the Loblaw and Gatik partnership, why Loblaw chose to work with Gatik. Wayne, from your perspective, what you've seen in the partnership over the past several years of our operations, and just some of those keynotes I think we helped to share with the group.
Thanks, Rich. Again, thanks for inviting me to speak today on this. It's been a great road. Sorry, just thinking here. Anyways, no, it's been a great road trip with Gatik. We turned around and started meeting with Gatik. I think the first time we met was 2019, early 2019. We went out to San Fran, of course, the center hub of all autonomous. Met with a few companies, and we landed on Gatik after meeting up with a few of them, because what Gatik had was a little bit of a different business model. They wanted to show, last mile, middle mile type deliveries, which is that dependable, that repeatable short haul route, which is really good for us, as far as from micro fulfillment centers to distribution centers to stores. And it's a level 4. So we're not trying to solve for the world and trying to get back and forth from, Toronto to Montreal or Calgary or anywhere else like this. We're looking at just local pickup and delivery. And so as we worked through this, it was a little bit of going through COVID and that, trying to get all this done was a little bit of a stretch. It was a little difficult at times. But you know, Gatik has been a great partner of ours, and you know, when we had our first autonomous, you know, you'll see the video later on. When we had our first autonomous drive this summer, you know, it kind of brought all of the, you know, the last 3-4 years of work all together in one, to see this truck drive down, you know, was used to Mississauga, Brampton area, probably through two of the worst intersections in Ontario, which is Steeles and 10 and Steeles and Mavis. Like those by far are multiple lanes, you know, going down this, and the truck did it flawlessly. We've had 5 out in this application right now, but it's, you know, they're working well right now, and you know, looking forward to what the future brings with us.
Great, thanks for that, Wayne. And yeah, as Wayne mentioned, yeah, certainly more exciting than me speaking for the duration of the presentation. We'll have a video showing our driverless operations in action a little bit further down the line. So for those on the call, perhaps a little bit less familiar with the autonomous transportation landscape, we thought it'd be helpful just to outline that and show, you know, where Gatik fits in and where Gatik lives and succeeds. So on one end of the spectrum, you've got companies who are looking at long haul applications of the technology. So, you know, movement of goods, you know, in theory, at a time when Canadian regulations allow for it, you know, from ocean to ocean, right? Someday perhaps. The other end of the spectrum, you have B2C applications of the technology. So companies working on delivering perhaps a bag of groceries or a pizza to a consumer's doorstep. So lower speeds and limited payload. Where we live and succeed, and where we've been plugged into Loblaw's logistics network, as Wayne mentioned, is on that hub and spoke model. So moving goods on critical short haul routes, which have become increasingly important, I think, to serve Loblaw's end consumer, not least over the course of the past 5 years. Obviously, within the context of the pandemic, the rise in e-commerce. You know, show me a consumer that doesn't want goods cheaper, close to home, available more frequently. I think gone are the days of consumers being comfortable waiting 3, 4, 5 days for a package of goods. Most folks want them either delivered to their doorstep or available in store within that 1 to 2 hour pickup delivery window after they've just placed their order online. So that's really where we fit in, and the medium duty, light medium duty trucks that we operate are a great form factor for that. Responsive, flexible. We offer up custom temperature controlled compartments in our boxes, so we can deliver ambient, refrigerated, and frozen goods. And I think, you know, this is one of the reasons why, you know, our partnership came together incredibly quickly from the outset. There was a really distinct identified need on Loblaw's side, and you know, Gatik, we say this in all humility, as far as the autonomous middle mile, medium duty space is concerned, we're the only game in town, and really feel as though we've developed a very, very strong niche and expertise there in that sector. So the partnership came together very quickly, and it's been amazing to see what we've achieved together over the past 4 years. So a little bit just by the numbers, and this is across North America wide, and I will call out that we do operate at Gatik across the continent. So I won't read off all of the stats from the screen there, but you can see quite significant numbers in terms of autonomous deliveries completed. We now have a fleet of over 60 AVs, you know, across the continent. When we talk about single routes, what do we mean? Short haul routes, single routes up to about 150 miles in total. Though I will say in Ontario, the routes are somewhat shorter than that, based upon Loblaw's needs, of course. And we're very proud, and I want to call this out, very proud to boast 100% safety record with our autonomous driving system engaged. That's ADS, autonomous driving system engaged. So to the partnership, and a little bit more detail here. So we began operations at the beginning of 2020. We expanded to five routes with Loblaw serving customers from their MFC, the micro fulfillment center in north central Toronto. I'll call out as well something that we undertook, and there's information happy to share with folks on this if they're interested. We did share a press release and information quite publicly about this. We undertook an extensive third-party safety assessment before launching our driver out operations. And I just want to, call out, Wayne and the Loblaw team for this. We certainly appreciated, being put through that process and coming out with flying colors, of course. But I think it was a testament to the relationship that we were asked to do that, and just in terms of how Loblaw sees this and how, frankly, autonomous delivery should be seen, we hold ourselves to an incredibly high standard. So we were very happy to go through that process, and speaks to the rigor with which we undertake our operations. You can see on the map there, that is actually the map of the route on which we achieved a Canadian first milestone, a national first milestone, right here in Ontario, in the GTA, moving goods out in the Brampton area from a Real Canadian Superstore to 1PCC to Loblaw HQ with driver out deliveries. So it was a pretty exciting day. It's been pretty exciting ever since. To actually see this technology. I mean, this is where the true benefits of autonomy come in, when we move to that aha moment, that driver out moment, doing that safely, efficiently, securely. And what I tell everyone who's not been in an autonomous truck before is, the first few minutes of your ride, your mind is blown. It's super exciting. It's brand new. And then after a few minutes, it gets pretty boring and pretty dull pretty quickly, which is exactly what you want, because the technology is doing exactly what it is supposed to be doing: safe, reliable, structured, and like I said, doing exactly what it should be doing. So some of the key milestones across Ontario, I can start here, and Wayne, please feel free to jump in if I miss anything. But yeah, we began testing with Loblaw January 2020 with one truck, expanded, as I mentioned, November 2020, announced the expansion to move goods from 5 new routes from the MFC to retail locations across the GTA. And then undertook that safety assessment that I'd called out. I want to highlight a really interesting partnership that we have with Goodyear, which has really benefited our Loblaw ops here. Yeah, you all are very familiar with inclement Ontario winters. We get it all: snow, freezing rain, fog, all kinds of stuff to handle. So we've integrated Goodyear smart tire technology into our trucks. So we have tires with sensors inside which speak in real time to our autonomous driving system, transposing immediate data relating to, for example, road conditions, weather conditions. So this helps our system understand stopping distances, enhances vehicle performance. So ideal for the winters that we get in Ontario. And I'll call out as well here, April 22, and this was another Canadian first milestone for Loblaw and Gatik. We received approval to operate under the driverless testing stream, and I'll speak more about our relationship with the ministry in a later slide. But very proud to achieve that and receive that approval, and we commenced driverless operations October of 2022. So a powerful milestone for us. Wayne, did I miss anything there? And that's a quick run through 4 years. Did I miss anything?
That was a pretty quick run through. We did a lot of work in all that time.
Yeah, it was. It was not something, and I think it's important to emphasize this. This was not something we achieved overnight. It took a long time to get there, as it should, with the technology that we're introducing to Ontario's roadways. Safe and structured approach to the deployment of driver out goods delivery. So I did want to call out our working relationship, very close working relationship with key stakeholders in Ontario. We'll first call out our relationship with the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario. So we operate, folks may know, we operate under Ontario's Automated Vehicle Pilot Program, which has been in place since 2016, was updated in 2019 with some additional opportunities to be able to advance to that driver out stage. So again, speaking about partnerships, as much as we work closely with Loblaw through all of this, we also work incredibly closely with the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, not just through the permitting process, but in terms of deep ongoing information engagement, information exchange, reporting processes with the MTO. We, of course, also work closely with law enforcement, with first responder community, hosting education awareness sessions with those folks. So it's not just a question of making sure folks are informed about what we're doing, but deeply engaged throughout the process. And of course, you know, in terms of our technology, we implement across the board all recommended standards and best practices from federal, provincial, and municipal levels as well. So there's a put it like this, we're not doing this in isolation. It's a really collaborative approach to achieving the success that we've had with Loblaw, and we're very grateful to the ministry, to the first responder community, and to other partners as we've gone along our journey. So this slide will help to outline Gatik's approach to autonomous operations on short haul B2B routes. So if you look in the top kind of triangle, the top left triangle of the screen there, you'll see the model that's employed by robotaxis or automated vehicles that move people versus goods. If you imagine you need to pick folks up and drop them off at what ultimately amounts to an infinite number of pickup and drop-off locations, this is a very worthy problem to solve, but takes a significant amount of time and resources to achieve. Whereas what Gatik is doing with Loblaw, you see in the bottom right triangle of the screen there, we move goods between a limited number of fixed pick-up and drop-off locations on repeatable, predictable routes. So it's a hyper-constrained model. Ultimately, this means that in order to validate the technology, it takes considerably less data and time to be able to reach the point at which we can safely operate our trucks. So it's a complicated problem to solve. Autonomous vehicles, autonomous driving. We like to keep it as simple as possible. I often say it's the space race of our time. So by constraining the challenge of autonomy as much as possible, ultimately we can commercialize a product more quickly versus other applications. And as I said before, for us, it's all about delivering for our customer. It's all about delivering for Loblaw. It's all about what we can do to bring the benefits to Loblaw's consumers through this service. So that's why it's been so exciting for us.
Yeah, so one thing I'll add into that is, as it's a dedicated, repeatable route, the one thing you've got to remember is we've got 27 distribution centers in Canada and 2,300 stores. We're not going out, so we're not in that top left area. Like, we're not coming in saying, I want to go to this store today, another store tomorrow. We go DC to store, or in this case, the one that was in Brampton, you know, was going to our micro-fulfillment center, picking up groceries for our colleagues at our head office and delivering them back there. And that's where the difference is between the level 4 and level 5 that I think people have to understand if they don't, is that it's dedicated, repeatable route every day. This is what it does. This is what it learns.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We know our routes more intimately than anyone else on the planet. We have, as well, speaking to the safety piece, we have the luxury, of course, of avoiding schools, hospitals, fire stations, heavily pedestrianized areas of historically high impact. We can necessarily plan for the safest routes and optimize for them. So again, safety is really inherently built into our use case there. And just to finish up before we get to some video footage of operations, you know, we see safety really holistically. So beyond our technology, which is Gatik Carrier, that's the name for our proprietary autonomous driving technology. We have teams monitoring vehicle asset health and maintenance across every aspect of the journey, looking at component health and redundancy. As I mentioned, we engage very closely with law enforcement, local authorities through dedicated engagement plans, ongoing information sessions. We have very rigorous training, hiring, recruitment, training and retention programs for our autonomous vehicle operators, and as well, our remote supervisors. So I'll speak a little bit to that model as well, because I think it's critical to highlight. So not only do we have autonomous vehicle operators behind the wheel before moving to that driver out stage, but at the driver out stage, we have a remote supervision model in place. So what the remote supervision model involves is a human in the loop locally to the vehicle's operations that is able to provide oversight and a high-level decision to the vehicle at the local level, should there need to be one. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there are unexpected roadworks or a tree falls down. There's any number of things that could happen. And the vehicle needs to borrow the neighboring lane to circumnavigate whatever unusual situation it might be that it is encountering. The vehicle would be able to patch into the remote supervisor. The remote supervisor can essentially provide a high-level decision, either a yes or no. You can borrow the neighboring lane safely, or you cannot for the time being. The vehicle would then undertake that dynamic driving task at the local level. So the vehicle does it itself. And to be very clear, we're not teleoperating or remote controlling vehicles at high speeds on public roads. It's unsafe to do so, but having a human in the loop, so being able to leverage human intuition and that involvement when there is a need to do so is an additional fail-safe layer of redundancy for us. And with that, hopefully we're going to be able to play this video, and if it gets a bit too jerky or stop-starty, Mike, Wayne, jump in and let me know, and we'll certainly be able to share the link for the video to folks after the call if they're interested. But I'm going to try playing it now.
The supply chain right now is under stress because of the increasing or exploding consumer demands. Consumers nowadays essentially are placing orders on their phone, and they want their deliveries to be done same day or in 2 hours window or the next day. This is for the very first time in the history of Canada that a company has taken out the driver from behind the steering wheel, and we have these fully driverless vehicles on the hub and spoke operations route for Loblaws.
The key learnings that we've had in partnering with Gatik are that we can use autonomous deliveries in a B2B model to improve supply chain efficiency and deliver more frequent loads for the benefit of our customers. The middle mile is becoming more important to our customers because they're demanding choice, speed, and the Gatik solution is by being focused on the middle mile allows us to really deliver against that value proposition while we have a fixed route that we're able to test these trucks against.
For these kinds of models, our customers are needing to do is have these trucks run operations 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Essentially, these are deliveries that are happening multiple times a day instead of once or twice every week.
The importance to our customers of being fully driverless is that we're able to meet the demands of speed and location that our customers want to pick up our e-commerce orders.
When a consumer places an order on their app, what happens in the background is these fully driverless trucks are essentially doing fulfillment of those orders between the retail stores and micro-fulfillment centers of Loblaws. So this kind of operation, as we enter this fully driverless era, allows us to extend these benefits of high-frequency deliveries, lower costs, and safety to our customers that can essentially pass these on to their end consumers.
I'm excited about being the first to market because one, it was a huge collaboration with Gatik, and two, it was a significant milestone. I feel we've been working on this for a number of years, and it's great to see it come to fruition and be first, but to do it in a way, that I feel we've managed risk and we've been able to sort of keep the spirit of Loblaw's innovation and innovative spirit while we bring in a new process and new technology to market.
Okay, and with that, hope folks have enjoyed the presentation, and we're here to stand for questions and comments if there are any. I will just say as well, the lady that you saw speaking in the video there, that's Apeksha Kumavat, our chief engineer. So she's a large part of the brains behind the operation in terms of having helped us achieve this technological milestone and developing our autonomous technology. So a privilege to work with her. I wanted to recognize her, but we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today, and yeah, here to stand for questions.
All right. Well, we've got 30 minutes left, so we've got lots of times for questions, people. So if you have any you want to ask, feel free to type it in. We do have one question so far. If any others have questions, feel free to put them in the chat now, and Rich and Wayne will get to them. So we have a question from Crystal. What would happen if one of the routes has a closed road for construction, as an example?
Yep, great question. So we do plan for alternative eventualities, right? So I mentioned that we operate over known repeatable routes. Of course, we do plan for the eventuality that there may be road closures. So there's a couple of things that can happen here. Number one, there are pre-programmed engineered learnings which are built into the design of the system, which know additional routes in close quarters to the areas in which we operate. And additionally, I mentioned, should there be a need for a remote supervisor to help provide any instruction to the vehicle, and the vehicle undertake that dynamic driving task at the local level, we will be able to leverage that support as well.
Okay. We have two other ones that have popped in. So we have a question from Osvaldo. This would be for you, I think, Wayne. Can you say more about benefits Loblaw's hopes to achieve by removing drivers? More frequent deliveries would need more fuel, maintenance, etc. Can you expand more on the return on investments that Loblaw's hopes to achieve with this?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great question. I think if you take a look at right now, this is still in a very early pilot phase, and what we're looking at is proof of concept in a lot of this stuff right now. We are looking at potentially more deliveries, but we're also looking at safety as well. You're going to say that if a driver can represent 35% of the fuel economy, and by going autonomous, I can save fuel economy, deliver better products, go electric, and deliver. That's the next phase of this, would be putting these on electric vehicles. Drivers are getting harder and harder to find right now. To backfill for drivers is not an easy job. So, in some respect, we're not looking at this for, a couple, 3 years down the road. We're looking at this 3 to 5 to 10 as public acceptance, takes over a little bit more. I mean, if you take a look at just driving down Highway 10 in Brampton through its construction when it was going on this summer, I mean, it did it flawlessly. And then there's a huge safety element to it as well.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Wayne. We have all sorts of questions coming in now, so that's great. Another question from Saravani. What are the back-end operations for this project?
I might have to ask for the question, do we define back-end operations? What are we referring to here?
It'd be hard for them to define. They'd have to do it through chat. But my guess is, and I'm trying to read a mind here, which is dangerous. But I'm guessing what they mean is who's monitoring it, who's watching it, what's the involvement in the back end. You mentioned remote operations, so my guess is it has something to do with that. What's involved in watching the vehicle, who's involved, the technology that's involved, that sort of thing.
Yeah, if we're talking the remote supervision, okay. Thank you, Sravani, for clarifying. Thank you, Mike, for mind reading. That was very well done. So, yeah, as I mentioned, Sravani, we have a remote supervision model in place. So there is consistently across every single vehicle's route in operation, a remote supervisor monitoring every aspect of those driver out operations. So as much as I mentioned, the vehicle is undertaking the driving tasks at the local level. So it is the autonomous truck that is handling the driving maneuvers on the road. In terms of what I understand by back end, there is a human monitoring. So if there is a need to leverage human assistance, and I'm in a hotel, so my light's just gone off. Give me a second. Apparently it is motion activated, and I wasn't bobbing my head around enough. I'll move a bit more. So if there is a need to leverage that human involvement, that supervision, we can do. And I mentioned the tree having fallen down or unexpected roadworks example, and a human supervisor being able to provide a high level decision to the vehicle. The remote supervisor is also monitoring other aspects, right? The human can see everything that the vehicle can see. Well, not quite, because the vehicle can see more, but the human is able to see what's happening on the roadways. So there's a number of critical data tracking points that are being gathered continuously across operations, which help to inform and enhance our vehicle performance as well.
All right, perfect. Can you walk, this might be for both of these, I don't know, I'll let you decide, but can you walk us through the plan for the future? So, i.e., will you be introducing long-haul driverless vehicles? Do you see these trucks going across the border, et cetera? So I think it could be for both of you, maybe a question for Gatik, what you see as the future, and then Wayne, then we'll go to you after Richard's talk to discuss what Loblaw sees as their future with this.
Yeah, great question. And so what I'd shared in part of the presentation was that not only have we got operations with Loblaw in Ontario, we also operate across a number of different states in the US, and that's typically with our larger vehicle platforms, so Class 6 and Class 7. So we're not currently operating Class 8 vehicles, but we are operating larger vehicle platform sizes in Texas, in Arkansas, and testing in other locations as well. So we've found that larger vehicle form factor has been very, very productive in other areas. Currently, under the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario's regulatory framework, there is a weight limit to vehicle operation, capped at 4,500 kilograms. So before that commercial motor vehicle threshold point. I will say, we're really excited about the prospect of being able to bring a larger vehicle platform to Ontario at such time as the ministry deems appropriate within the context of an expanded regulatory framework. So certainly there are discussions happening on that front, and it's something that we are excited about as a prospect for the future, and being able to keep delivering and scaling with Loblaw in Ontario.
Yeah, as far as as far as long term is crossing the border, like we're under the 4,500 kgs right now, and that's where our goal is right now. That's our long term. I would say our short term vision is just B2B. Looking long term, 5, 10 years out, 15 years out, who knows? I mean, that's going to be, not in my career. I would assume for the most part, but will it get there? I think it will.
Thanks, guys. And Rich, you touched on a bit at the end. For those that aren't aware, Ontario has recently just started consultations with stakeholders on the possibility of expanding autonomous vehicles for commercial motor vehicles under a pilot program. Very early stages, they're getting stakeholder input and feedback, but it's certainly something that is being considered under strict guidelines. And I know other provinces, territories, and states, it really depends on which jurisdiction you're in, right? There's different rules and regs for each one of them. And I think long haul, to your point, Wayne, that's going to be the challenge, is to go long haul, you have to get all the jurisdictions that you're traveling on to be on the same page. And we're a long way from that. We're at a stage now where they're pretty much going to have to stay within jurisdictions, and those jurisdictions that are allowing it. But
and I'll just maybe build on that and say, should there be eventually a regulatory environment in Ontario in which we are able to deploy our medium duty vehicles, we're still talking about short haul B2B use case, right? The Gatik, that's Gatik's bread and butter, if you like, where we live and succeed. So even if we are talking about a larger vehicle form factor, from our perspective, certainly we're still talking about a hyper-constrained, structured, known, repeatable, predictable route use case with all of those safety guardrails, safety checks and balances that are built into our use case remain the same. So even if the vehicle platform is slightly larger, the approach to safety doesn't change under that regime.
Yeah, a good point. Next question, can you speak to the cost of insuring these vehicles in comparison to insuring a driver-manned truck?
Yep, happy to. I'm happy to share what is enshrined within current code and in the regulatory framework under the MTO's AV pilot program. There is a $5 million liability for as a requirement for any company operating under the program.
And so I guess it'd be hard to touch. Every jurisdiction's different. Then we have members on this webcast from across the country and probably some in the US. So our members aren't just from Ontario. We are national. So is it the same in every? I guess it won't be the same in every jurisdiction or state. Each one has their own separate requirements.
That's true. That is fair to say. I will say, yeah, there is a range. There is a range across states in the US, and certainly with Ontario is very much leading the way. I would say nationally, as far as experience and expertise with an AV program is concerned. Like I mentioned, the MTO's had a program in place since 2016. So compared with other jurisdictions across the country, Ontario is certainly way ahead and has had this stipulation in since we've been operating in the program. And so yeah, that's probably the best answer I could provide on that front. But you're absolutely right, Mike. There is a range of how different jurisdictions view the insurance piece. Yes.
Okay. Another question from Charlie. I've seen examples with robo-taxi where they stop when emergency vehicles approach and block access to needed roadways or access points. How does Gatik address emergency vehicle situations?
Yeah, great question. So first, I'll kind of ask you to cast your mind back to the map I shared, where you sort of, if you see a robotaxi model use case, necessarily having to engineer and map out and be able to solve for a large urban metropolitan area in which you necessarily have to account for every possible scenario under the sun in that given metroplex. What we're doing is, again, much more constrained, limited number of nodes or points between which we're moving goods on a limited number of routes. So the likelihood of our exposure to emergency vehicles or busy intersections like the ones I believe that you're referring to that have been very well documented in other states across the US. It's a very different thing for us. Just at a sort of base level, the likelihood of us encountering or being involved in those types of scenarios is considerably less. Now, that being said, of course, I'm not trying to say that a Gatik truck would never encounter an emergency vehicle. Of course we do. So in terms of the approach, we work closely with first responder community to make sure that there's a two-way thing here, right? That number one, our technology knows how to recognize an emergency vehicle and follow the rules of the road, act accordingly, act as you or I would act in terms of, okay, if there's a fire truck coming with sirens on behind you, as soon as it is safe to do so, you pull over to the side with a slow and graceful stop and wait until the fire truck has passed. So exactly the same approach in terms of a traditional mindset there to responding to an emergency vehicle as an emergency vehicle would expect to be responded to, and also the other side of it as well is how can can emergency vehicles, recognize our trucks, and what are the engagement protocols there? And that comes through a lot of close quarter working, of course, between Gatik and between the first responder community. So it's a really important piece of what we do, and yeah, we take our relationships with the first responder community very seriously.
The technology is not the issue. The operator is. I was talking and forgot I was on mute. So I might be able to read minds, but I can't figure out how to unmute myself there. But driverless vehicles are a risk factor that is inevitable no matter how advanced the technology is. What are the measures we are taking to overcome the risk factors like accidents or breakdowns of vehicles?
So I guess I'll speak to the safety of our approach, right? So we've been operating now in Ontario for 4 years. We have never had an incident with our automated driving system engaged. So just to call that out, I think it's really important. As I mentioned as well, in the context of our growth with Loblaw and what we're doing together, right? I mean, this is not just Gatik's name on the truck, it's Loblaw's name on the truck as well. We've worked very closely. I mentioned third-party safety assessment. That's just one piece of the rigorous approach to safety that we take. Safety is embedded across every single aspect of our conception, testing, deployment, operations. Our engineering team, and frankly, all of us at Gatik live and breathe it. I mean, for us, it's an existential threat, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if an autonomous trucking company has an accident of any description with its automated driving system engaged, everybody hears about it and everybody's talking about it, as well they should be. We understand that. It's new technology and it should be respected as such accordingly, and we should hold ourselves accountable to the very highest standard, and we do. So I do just want to really emphasize that very, very strongly. Second, in terms of vehicle breakdowns, you mentioned. I mean, I'm assuming, if I'm interpreting the question correctly, what happens if there is, a mechanical breakdown of some sort, a flat tire, right? Let's call that a flat tire. That's something that can happen. We have tires the same as traditionally driven vehicles do, and a tire can go. One other advantage of Gatik's short haul B2B use case versus, say, for example, a long haul application of the technology is that we have very local, like hyper local on-site fleet assistance teams that can reach one of our vehicles very, very quickly. So if there is a need to attend to a vehicle on the side of a road to, for example, change a tire, that can be done very seamlessly and efficiently. So there's yet another advantage of constrained short haul, close to home operations as far as what we do is concerned.
Yeah, I think, Rich, the one other thing you got to remember is that the redundancy you have within all the braking systems, the steering systems, and so on and so forth. If the tire pressures, you brought up the tire, if it's supposed to be set at 95, it's gonna pull the vehicle over, send an alert, send an alarm to you well ahead of it getting to 80, 75, 80 psi, so that you can actually address it properly. And that could be an inner on a dual or something along those lines where the driver might not feel it. So every piece of this vehicle, it has a redundant backup. So the steering, braking, throttle, lights, it's got all that built into it. So as far as a backup to, I'll say, a brake system, you've got backup.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne, and I'll drill down a bit further as well with the technology. We use what we call a fully loaded sensor suite, a fully redundant sensor suite. So we have cameras, radars, lidars, GNSS situated all the way around the truck. So whereas if you imagine a human driver is having to cope with fading light, driving at whether 11 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is. Our trucks can see 360 degrees day or night, about the length of 7 football fields. So the ability for our vehicles to navigate the roadway scenarios that you or I might find challenging is immense. So again, safety is front and center of everything that we do and is inherently built into the technology, which is stationed and integrated from the ground up into our vehicles.
And I'll just kind of parlay on that a little bit more, Rich, and maybe you're more of the technical guy than I am on this stuff. they've also, I think everyone on the line's got to understand that between the LiDAR, radars, and cameras, everyone backs up, every technology backs up the other technology based on weather conditions. So they'll have some where cameras might not work in certain, or LiDAR might not work in snow and rain, where the camera and the radar would take over then. And you know, so everyone backs up each other one. They all have their benefits and their shortcomings, but because you've got three of them on there at any given time, where some of the cars out on the road today, whether you look at a Tesla or something like this, I believe they're only using camera right now.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for that, Wayne. Redundancy after redundancy after redundancy after redundancy. That's what it's about, so that there is never any single point of failure, right? To call it out distinctly, never any single point of failure. So it's an approach which makes sure that we are optimizing for safety on every single route that we take.
We do have two more questions in here. We still have 9 minutes left, so that's great. So before we get to those last two questions, I do have one just because it kind of ties in with what Wayne and you just spoke about with the redundancies. So what happens, worst case scenario, we get heavy snow, all the lines are blurred, so we can't see the lines. And then, God forbid, for some reason, the cell signal goes down, you know, the Rogers network crashes, whatever happens. So what happens if every communication that is available for this vehicle is lost at the same time and there's no redundancy left? Does the vehicle, once it loses communication, is the vehicle set up to like pull over and stop? Like how is that handled in the worst case unlikely scenario that all its communication is lost and it simply can't read what it needs to read?
Yeah, great question. And just to build on the kind of redundancy after redundancy comments that we made previously in terms of access to connectivity, which can happen, and there is satellite and multiple different cell channels for certain aspects of operation, but we have multiple layers of redundancy there as well. And there has never been a point at which everything has gone down. I mean, even if Rogers goes down, there are multiple other providers, and so there's always those redundancies, right? I mean, we'll remember the Rogers thing, but there are, like I said, multiple different channels that we can rely upon. Now, to your point, let's say in a doomsday scenario, right? What would happen? So our vehicles are programmed to undertake what is called a minimal risk maneuver, MRM, and achieve a minimal risk condition, MRC. So this would involve pulling over to the side of the road with a slow and graceful stop to await for human assistance, should there be a need, should there be need for that.
Okay, perfect. I think this one we kind of already touched on. Wondering if you can comment on the advancements with respect to the regulations and legislations regarding AV technology. Are you limited by the current state? I think the answer to that question would be yes, limited by the current state. You have to stay within. Basically, you're going to have to operate within the jurisdiction because the rules are different in every jurisdiction. And we're a long way away from having any rules being similar to allow you to go from coast to coast. But is there anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, I will say a couple of things on that, and you're right. And we'll look at the US and Canada together here, if I may. So, in Canada, Ontario, like I said, is really leading the way as far as this work is concerned. I think it's fair to say other jurisdictions, certainly Quebec has done some work in this area, and beyond that, other provinces are starting to look much more keenly at what a regulatory regime could and should look like for an autonomous vehicle future. The US, you've got 26 states today that currently regulate for and allow for driver out operations. So the movement of freight only, no human operator on board, and an additional 13, 14 states that allow for very advanced levels of testing. So a huge amount of activity happening in the US, though to the points already made, absolutely right there. It is state by state or province by province, jurisdiction by jurisdiction. So when you reach a provincial border, right, Gatik is not about to be moving goods, even if Loblaw wanted us to across the Manitoba border, right? Not until such time as there there is more of a universal landscape for goods movement, which, you know, in my humble opinion, will certainly come in time, but will be a long and considered conversation with all relevant stakeholders.
Well, you got to also remember, this is a B2B. This is a repeatable route. So, you know, when the one thing that Gatik did a very good job with was involving the first responders and in the MTO within that region. So when we came up with this that route between our head office and Steeles and 10, you know, they met with the Peel Police, they met with the fire departments, they met with the MTO. So they did all that backup, you know, that homework long before the vehicles ever went autonomous, or, you know, they might have been learning the route, but at least they reached out to let everybody know what was going on. This vehicle drives right by on Highway 10, right by the police station every day.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Like as I mentioned before, we're not doing this in isolation. One of my jobs, probably my biggest job, is to ensure no surprises as far as this is concerned. And hey, I'll say again, you know, we appreciate so much everybody tuning in today. You know, the more that we can do to make sure folks are, you know, abundantly aware of what we're doing and how we're doing it, the approaches that we're taking, safety first and foremost, engagement, first responder community, working closely with the MTO, I think is really important. So it's been very helpful today to be able to share a little bit more about what we're up to.
So we got 3 minutes left, but if we go over by a minute or two, I'm going to say that's okay, because we only have 2 questions left, and I'd hate to leave one question unaddressed. So the 2 questions that are in the chat, we'll address those. If there's any other questions people have that they didn't put in, feel free to email us, and I can forward your email on to Rich or Wayne and see if they're able to answer any question you may have afterwards. But 2 left in the chat, we'll address them before we sign off. Can you speak to any of the special maintenance requirements on these AV vehicles? So is there anything special to these for maintenance other than your normal operating human-manned vehicle, I guess?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I mean, so we have a very advanced sensor suite, as I mentioned, integrated into our vehicle platform. So the lidars, the radars, the cameras, the GNSS, the technology that's embedded across the vehicle. So beyond the regular, you know, technical and maintenance checks that would be undertaken for vehicles to operate on the road day in, day out, which our maintenance and technician team takes care of. There is additional sensor calibration and technical maintenance work that takes place on our trucks. And you know, this is happening daily before each route. So it's a really, really high bar that we have set for ourselves with this. You know, no truck leaves our vehicle depot without every single aspect of the hardcore mechanics of the vehicle and the additional technology having been you know, put through the mill by way of an inspection process. So this happens daily, routinely, extensively.
Okay, perfect. And one last question. Can you speak to the liability of automation providers versus the operators in the case of an accident or incident? Who would own the risk?
Right. So I'll share that, you know, if, and again, should there be an incident in which a vehicle was involved, one of our vehicles was involved in, any conversation around at fault and liability would be undertaken by all of the relevant authorities involved, and Gatik would, should this happen, engage appropriately as any operator would in any situation like that.
Wayne, anything to add to that?
No, I think I'm good with that. You know, this is a third party running, so they have the Gatik has the insurance, and you know, the provinces have outlined what the minimum requirements are, and that's what we've done by.
Perfect. All right. Well, there's no other questions in the chat, so I'm glad you left lots of time for questions, because we filled up the entire time slot, which shows lots of interest and lots of engagement in this. So, any final thoughts from you, Rich or Wayne, before we sign off?
I'll just say thank you for the questions. We very deliberately wanted to leave plenty of time for conversation around this. So truly appreciate all of the engagement and comments and questions. It's been an absolute honor to present today. So thanks. And like you said, if there are any additional questions folks didn't get to today, Mike, feel free to share my contact information. Folks can connect with me directly. So thank you. And over to you, Wayne, as well for any additional comments, of course.
No, just it's a privilege. Mike, thanks for inviting us on here to talk today. I really appreciate the time that you've given us to go on about our project.
All right, awesome. Well, Rich and Wayne, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to present this to us. Once again, thanks to our sponsors, Samsara and Intact Insurance for sponsoring today's webinar. Thanks to all of you for taking time out of your day to attend. And as we sign off and look forward to 2024, I just want to wish everybody season's greeting, happy holiday season. No matter what tradition it is you celebrate, and I hope everybody enjoys time with their family and friends and has a happy holiday season. So take care, everyone. We'll talk to you.
Thanks. Happy holidays.
Take care.